Pierce County homelessness. Pierce County is just to the south of me. I'm in King County. Pierce County homelessness up 11% in 2025. And what does their leadership do? Well, they go ahead and just lie, pointing to housing costs as the reason why everybody's just giving up and taking to the streets, living in a tent, doing some drugs, and all that good stuff. Yeah, housing first. Let's get into it. Here we go. So yesterday, I came in early and recorded a couple of podcasts, and then I went to the Sanity Forum, which was quite a few thought leaders on homelessness, just basically homelessness, drugs, you name it, liberal policy that's gone sideways and what conservatives can do to kind of push back. Michael Shellenberger, San Francisco was there. Christopher Rufo was there. All the local conservatives, Brandy Cruz, they were all there. Really interesting seminar. I didn't go back the second day. I got stuff to do. I'm doing a wedding next week. Just wasn't able to make that work out. But to hear some of these thought leaders talk, and housing first was brought up multiple times, and it's just it's a train wreck. It's an absolute train wreck because you're giving housing to somebody who has no intention of cleaning up their life, getting off the streets, the street lifestyle. And even if you give them housing, oftentimes they're going to have a tent and an encampment so they can just keep doing their drugs there because the housing first doesn't allow it. So complete train wreck of a housing first and harm reduction were a couple of the big ones. And those are huge because harm reduction is all harm, no reduction. And it's basically give the drug addict everything but the drugs. And it should work out great because we don't want them to get hepatitis. Yeah, we don't want to get hepatitis. So Pierce County's homeless population continued to increase in 2025 as county leaders vouched for more affordable housing to change the trajectory. Literally insanity. Why is that insane? Because you've been doing the housing first model since 2004? How's that working out? How is homelessness doing? How are we doing as a country with that model? Terrible, terrible. So the county leaders want more affordable housing to change the directory. Build it and they will come. That's the mantra here. That's the reality. It's not housing costs. There's a lot of places where housing is super expensive and people haven't just, I guess I'll become a heroin addict now. I guess I'll just quit my job and I'll live on the streets and sell my body, and just smoke the Fetty all day long. There's a lot of areas where that is not the case, but it's because this is what they pushed for, because that's where all the money comes from, for all the ridiculousness, and it's not changing the trajectory. It increases the trajectory. Housing first increases the trajectory of homelessness. Pierce County's 2025 point-in-time count, that's the PIT count, found 2,965 people experiencing homelessness in Pierce County, an 11% increase from 2,066 in 2024, and a 56% increase from 2020. And you're going to blame that on housing costs? Nah, I call absolute nonsense on that one. That is a shenanigan to say, housing costs. There's a lot of areas where housing has literally gone through the roof and homelessness hasn't. But state of Washington supports homelessness because this is one of those failed liberal progressive policies that simply doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Look at all the areas that have put it into place. How's that working out for you? How's it working out in Washington State? Look around. Not that hard to figure out, right? In fact, we just had, what'd we have? Double homicide in a homeless encampment. But don't worry about that. Crime stats are down, right? Over the last 10 years, homelessness throughout the region rose 125% since 2015, the same rate as median home prices. Rental rates also doubled within that time span as well. Yeah. And you know why? Because you got a bunch of policy where you've constricted the supply of housing. And guess what? When you've got massive demand, you got people moving in, and you've restricted the supply, prices go up. So more policy that is just absolutely, I mean, you can't blame one with the other. Oh, I guess I'll just give up. Fatty sounds pretty good. Let's just start smoking it up, right? No. And building more, they will come, and they have come, and they are coming 11% more, right? And this is based on the pit count, which is a wildly known inaccurate counting of the homeless population. Because you go out one night with a bunch of volunteers, there isn't much, uniformity in the way that they measure. That guy kind of looks homeless. Yep, chalk him up. The county's homeless management information system prioritizes a housing first approach because it's working so well. It's working so well in order to curb the rising pit results. Does it ever curb them? No, it doesn't. Because the bottom line is, and in the seminar, the Sanity Forum, a lot of it had to do with involuntarily putting people into treatment, involuntarily putting people into mental institutions. Because that's what it's going to take. And yet you don't have the funding for either the addiction services or the mental clinics. You don't have that. We gave that all up and pushed people to prison, pushed people to the streets, and here you go. You've got people that are absolutely whacked out of their minds, shouldn't be on the streets, but they're doing drugs because they're self-medicating, and nobody addresses that. Because it's one of those things where, we got to let people make their own decisions. To die on the streets in a rat-infested, garbage, overridden, needle-laden homeless encampment that is just absolutely filthy. And that's what these big progressive cities, free will, got to do what you got to do. This crisis didn't happen overnight. It's the direct result of a housing market that has simply become unaffordable for too many of our neighbors. Just nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. And you know it. But that's the mantra that they keep going down because that's where the funding comes from. Nobody really wants to solve the homeless crisis because then so many people would be out of jobs. So many people, so many of these nonprofits would just, boom, gone overnight. Oh, they're homeless. We got a method. Hey, we identified this person. We put them in this clinic and identify this person. I mean, you're going to have people who are going to address that kind of thing, but not the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we're spending now. So, it's literally the definition of an insanity. Let's just keep doing it. It should get better. Why are homeless numbers just continuing to rise? Does the cost of housing have an impact? Yeah, but it's not the primary. You've created a situation where it's okay for people to just be whacked out of their gourds screaming at the trees on drugs with mental issues. That's fine. I'll work it out. It's all good. Keep voting blue. County executive added that investments in housing and other homeless services will be included in Melto's biennial budget proposal set to be presented to the county council next month. How many times can you keep raising taxes and point to numbers that don't work? Yeah, how many? A lot, apparently. Solutions to homelessness have become a divisive issue across the U.S. as President Donald Trump recently issued an executive order redirecting federal funding to substance abuse treatment. This is genius. Because it's so basic. Hey, your approach hasn't been working. Let's go a different one. Let's go to a treatment-based, a substance abuse-based. Enforcing bans on open drug use and camping on public property. Supporters of the treatment first approach, and I'm totally for that. As a parent who lost a 27-year-old, 100% treatment first, not housing first. You take an addict, stick them into housing, they're just going to OD by themselves, which is my son did that. He was in his own apartment. Different story, but treatment first? Yeah, you got to approach it that way. Because just giving people housing, they'll get that stability. No, they'll get that stability and they'll just keep doing drugs. Nobody wants to get off these drugs. They just don't. Supporters of the treatment first approach say it will be better equip Washington municipalities to address homelessness, which they believe is interwoven with drug addiction and mental health issues. Clearly, clearly go to any homeless encampment. Just see the filth and squalor that's going on. The reason for that is they're being given food, they're being given clothing, they're being given tents, they're being given blankets, they're being given everything, oftentimes except the drugs. Here's a crack pipe to smoke your fentanyl with. I mean, these are not, hidden quantities. This is harm reduction, which is all harm, no reduction. So interwoven with drug addiction and mental health issues, 100%. 100%. I mean, just literally go to a big homeless encampment, spend an hour there, and tell me what you think. You tell me that you think it's the cost of housing. Seriously. Spend 2 hours? I dare you. I dare you. Go spend 2 hours in a big homeless encampment if you can. And you know what? Better yet, do it at night. Do it like midnight. Yeah. Yeah. If you're a female, do not do that. Still, Pierce County points to the region's affordable housing capacity. According to a press release, more than 17,500 people entered Pierce County's homeless crisis response system, while 1,375 have exited into permanent housing so far in 2025. Out of the 1,375 that exited into permanent housing, 84 remained housed for at least 2 years. To the county, that proves stable housing works. But it cannot keep up without a dramatic increase in the supply of affordable homes. Well, you don't have a supply of affordable homes in these big, progressive, Democrat-run cities, counties, states. You've killed affordable housing with all your regulation, period. So don't look for affordable housing. And if you're talking about mini homes, okay, yeah, you're just going to have, small entire towns filled with mini homes with the homeless people whacked out of their mind on drugs. That should be fine. The rest of the community, they'll understand. We've got those in Seattle. And when you've got them because you've got all kinds of shenanigans happening in the neighborhood. You got stabbings, you got shootings, you got murders, you got rapes, you got all that stuff. It's not that hard to figure out. But you know what happens? I live here in Bellevue, which is just outside of Seattle. On the news, people are like, there was 2 stabbings last night at a homeless encampment, and nobody's been arrested yet, but they're eagerly looking for the suspects. And you're like, no, it's just normal, everyday business when somebody gets the old stabola in a homeless encampment, because it's always over drugs, right? It's over money, it's over drugs. I mean, not that hard to figure out. And yet, it's like, we have no suspects, and what's going on? What is happening? One key strategy Pierce County is implementing is eviction prevention through its new eviction prevention program. You know what? If they spent the money from eviction prevention program on more substance treatment, that to me makes sense. I'm not saying you don't spend any money on eviction prevention programs, but you know what I mean? You've got a runaway train of problems with the whole homeless thing. That needs to be your focus. This other stuff, whatever. Dedicated approximately $6.3 million to run for 2 years in the first half of 2025, keeping 598 households from being evicted. And how many homeless people do you have? 17,500. Okay. All right. Versus 698. Yeah, those numbers make a lot of sense, but I get what you're saying. You don't want it to increase. But where is your emphasis? Your emphasis from leadership is, what can we get the most money for? Yeah, they'll fund housing. The county received nearly 2,000 applications for rental assistance during that same time. The other thing I struggle with is if housing costs are going up because your leadership has restricted supply and the ability, and that's on a state basis a lot of the time. If your leadership, if you've continuously been voting blue and you're in a state that's incredibly expensive, that's why. So then you need to take some personal responsibility at some point and say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to live here. I got to move somewhere else. And I've had tenants do exactly that. Hey, we can't afford Bellevue anymore. Love to keep renting your rental home. However, we got to go. And yet you hear leadership, well, let's just build some more housing. Should be fine. Instead of people making rational decisions. It's like, well, housing costs went up so much, literally, guess I'll get out the pipe and start smoking the fatty because that's what we're doing. That's what leadership says is happening. It's all because of expensive housing. That is certainly a portion of it. And in other areas where you've got Republican leadership and you've got affordable housing, those numbers are way, way lower because they're not making it a thing where you can just be homeless, do drugs on the sidewalk, and have multiple open-air drug markets throughout your community. That's not a thing. Much more difficult to be homeless in a homeless encampment doing all the crazy shenanigans that homeless people do that are on the news every single night. Here's another thing they're pointing to. We did this count today. I'm confident that we would be considerably higher number of people who are outdoors. Urban campers, they're just camping in an urban setting. I've said since the count took place, the county has seen the number of shelter beds decrease. There's going to be funding that is going to be pulled. It's going to be cut. Trump is moving things to a substance abuse-based treatment program versus, give them housing, should be fine, which is reasonable, which makes sense. Funding has decreased, he said, because funding for this nonsense doesn't work. It does not work. City of Tacoma has had to shut down roughly 200 shelter spaces that are no longer available to people in Tacoma or across the county. So you're going to have to pull the mat on a lot of these folks, and they're going to have to realize there aren't the resources. Then it's going to be kind of up to them because city officials aren't going to hold them accountable in any way, shape, or form. And so much of this has to do with the low or no barrier entry to housing. Not, hey, we need to get you sobered up here first. We need to get you into job training as we give you housing. But your housing is dependent upon that. Instead, it's this wildly liberal concept that if you just get them stabilized, they'll be fine on their own. Doesn't work. Absolutely does not work. And we've proven that time and time and time again. Literally, just go to a homeless encampment and see what you think. Just take a look around and go, oh. County Executive 𝗪𝗏𝗧𝗛 said much of the federal funding as supported housing assistance has started to dry up. It's been a long-term problem. And then we got the shot in the arm of the American Rescue Plan Act during the pandemic. We've spent those down. So you got a bunch of federal money just taxpayers' money just being shuffled to the homeless. Just let's shuffle it to those drug addicts. This is great. I mean, this is the greatest thing ever. Both Mello and Huff said the broader cause of the spike in homelessness is the lack of affordable housing. Making that connection. If you are a sheep, if you're a sheeple, then you will believe that. But if you think at all, go to the homeless encampment and you tell me that at the heart of this wildly out of control crisis is lack of affordable housing. Just look around. Look around. You tell me what you see, right? Oh, that tent's got a lot of garbage. Huh. Hey, that person isn't really wearing clothes. Hey, those people over there, they're having sex. Literally, last week, one of my videos was at Cal Anderson Park. There were homeless people underneath a blanket just going to Pound Town. Meanwhile, little Susie's playing there with her parents, 15, 20, 30 feet away. I don't even know what it was. You know what I mean? Experts warn the true number of people experiencing homelessness is likely much higher, as it can be impossible to count everyone who doesn't have access to stable housing, including people in their cars or couch surfing. 100% true. 100% true. And I'm not trying to knock the folks that are doing that. They're not taking handouts. And I know there's a lot of people. And hey, we're in an economic time that is difficult for everybody. But this notion that it's because of affordable housing that people end up addicts and, losing their minds if they haven't lost them already. That is absolutely ass backwards, right? It also does not include those on the verge of homelessness. One missed paycheck and you could lose it all, Michael Dobson. It's a tough economy out there, folks. So you got to be resilient. You got to figure out a way to make it work. And if you got to move somewhere, and I know that's easier said than done, but it's not like this comes overnight. This pricing has been incrementally going up since I don't know when. When I was, it would have been 1985, maybe 86. And I remember I had a little house here in East Bellevue. Guy was a framer. He had a framing company for big builders, and he was starting to build some of his own big custom homes. And he bought a little house for $75,000 and a year, and it was a 1,200 square foot ranch style Rambler home, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 75, and it went to 150. I want to say like 18 months later. That was the initial push for all these people coming from California. So I have been watching this for, years and years and years and years. It hasn't happened overnight. You have massive demand. You don't have the supply that keeps up with it. You don't have the ability to create that supply. This does not happen overnight. Those price increases just like, wow, doubled in 18 months. He got a good deal on it and he sold it at the peak before we had some, minor crash. How many crashes have we had? Market's over forever. Well, it's back now. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So I've been watching this happen forever, and it's not like this is a new phenomenon. What is new is our handling of the homeless crisis, which is to just endlessly dump money at it and hope for the best. Literally crazy. No, it's getting worse. I don't get it. Well, getting worse, huh? Weird. Here's where I will agree with some of this. Dodson said assistance systems are not easy to navigate and can be especially complex for people who have lacked educational opportunities, haven't gone to a lot of school, or who are mentally ill. It's so difficult to get into. You got to have insurance, right? You got to have insurance. I talked with Andrea Suarez. She was at the Sanity deal, and, she's talking about hauling people into treatment and people just bouncing because they can, because there's no accountability. Hey, you want to keep that housing? You got to go to an outpatient program, something along those lines where people are on an upward swing of getting off the drugs and maybe getting some mental help. Maybe it's long term, because a lot of these people you look at and you go, man, those people are far gone. You know what I mean? You used to have the winos back in the day when I was a kid. You called them bums. You called them winos. Now they are, and occasionally you had like the seasoned heroin addict who was all of 28 and yet looked like they were 45. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you do. You do. You've got, people in their 40s and 50s who have lived a life of drugs for the last 10, 15 years, and they look like they're 70, and they're literally screaming at the clouds. And we're allowing them to live on the streets, in our parks, on the sidewalks. Just do whatever, and be good. You guys can sober up whenever you need. No, it's absolute nonsense, right? Absolute nonsense. Here's one thing. So Spokane leaders, that's, big city east of here, Eastern Washington, push to drop housing first, align with Trump funding rules. Spokane Republicans doing some work. I am hearing good things from some of the Spokane leadership. It's like, you guys are on the right. You guys must be far enough away from Seattle where you kind of get it. Look at this sign. Mayor Brown, you promised something different than the Woodward administration. What is different? Engagement? Question. Transparency? Question. Are our unhoused friends better off? Question. Are our downtown businesses better off? Question. Yeah, are they? I'm going to go with, let's see. Engagement? No. Transparency? Nope. Are our unhoused friends better off? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. Are our downtown businesses better off? Hell to the no. No. So that's pushback from Republicans. Conservatives in Spokane are mounting an effort to pull pressure on the city to abandon the housing first model, hoping to save local taxpayers millions of dollars in federal funding. It would be so interesting to see. And you've got to have transitions, right? You got to have transitions. You can't just cut all the funding off and go, oh, that'll do it. Because you got a whole bunch of people that are dependent upon this, and it's going to rock that whole world. But it would be interesting to see in a social experiment, what would happen if you cut off funding for all the housing first and all the other ridiculous programs, harm reduction programs, cut those all? I wouldn't have a problem with cutting 100% of harm reduction, with the exception of some of those outreach workers do place people with, treatment programs, with mental health care, but there's no accountability. Like, they just try and get them in. So, what if you did just cut everything off? What would that look like? Would it be the absolute train wreck that these libtards claim? I don't think so. You know what? I think, the absolute worst of the worst, they're just going to have a really tricky time. I mean, you're letting people die on the street. So if you're okay with that, just keep going with what we got here. The other folks who are capable of working, who are just addicted to drugs, it would become very difficult for them to operate the way that they've gotten used to, especially when you start arresting them and incarcerating them for breaking the law. What about that? President Donald Trump recently issued an executive order condemning the Housing First model because it does not work, while urging grant recipients to prioritize treatment-based programs. This makes sense. Makes all the sense in the world. Homelessness is one, if not the most pressing issues in the region, with the bulk of federal funding allocated to the city and county. Look at California. How's that working out for them? Yeah, just building, the little tiny homes by the thousands, and it's not going all that well. That more and more homeless just keep coming to California, right? Build it and they will come, and that's happened. Spokane County has housing projects of its own, but the Board of County Commissioners tends to go for programs more aligned with the treatment-based approach. City of Spokane supports respite care and some treatment options as well, but is known for backing low-barrier projects around town. And what has that done for Spokane, as in cocaine? What has that done for Spokane's reputation? Not good, right? It's been tough. I got a young man who has been living with me, one of my son Brennan's friends. He got into Gonzaga Law School. He moved to Gonzaga on this past Monday. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. He moved a couple of days ago. So I'll be getting the lowdown on Spokane. We'll see what's going on there. But like everywhere, there are conservatives that are trying to make a difference, trying to get things back on track a little bit. And what Trump is doing on the federal level, to me, makes absolute sense. I mean, it's just not that hard to figure out that what we have been doing doesn't work. Need a new approach. Get people off the hooch. Get them in a place where either it's, mental health care if they don't want to abide by the law, jail, prison, or if they're mentally insane, get them the help that they need. Treatment-based, not housing first. Hey, we know you're crazy and you're on drugs, but let's put you in a little tiny home and we'll see how it goes. That isn't working. That will not work. That does not work. Let's try some other options. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I will make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.